Just put it live on YouTube. We get started in a couple minutes here. I am wrapping up my lunch. Look at me, I'm a professional. Welcome. Getting started in just a few minutes here. Jesse, welcome. I just saw your chat. Thanks for that. Absolutely. You can put questions in the chat or you can raise your hand with actually, there's a keyboard shortcut for that, Alt Y in Zoom, in case you didn't know. And if you've got any questions, feel free to stump me. Otherwise, I'm just going to go talk about stuff, you know? I can talk all day. Paige. Oh, she can't hear me yet. Paige, you got connected to audio. What's up? I haven't seen you in a while.
Oh my gosh, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I hear you.
Oh my God.
Fantastic.
We've been on Zoom for like 5 years since the pandemic, and I'm still having connection issues. Like, what is going on?
Listen, I'm never going to forget that one time you had the mustache.
I know. How are you
Okay,
doing?
for context, she had the little Zoom filters. They got the filters. And I was looking at her and I was like, no, that's like, I shouldn't talk. I shouldn't bring this up. There's no way. I'm not going to do it. And then like later in the day, and I was like, somebody needs to, I think it's a filter, but golly, if I said something and it wasn't a filter, how terrible, you know? And then you turned sideways like this one time, and I could see it floating off your face like 100% it was digital. I was like, thank God, Paige, Paige, Paige. And you're like, I know. So we got it turned off.
So we had this competition where we were doing like different faces or something like that. And then I forgot how to turn the filter off. So I had the mustache for weeks and it wasn't even
Oh my.
so like it was horrible. It was horrible.
That was one of the funniest Zoom moments I've been involved in because you had it
It's a
for hours.
conversation starter.
Oh, for
It
sure.
sure is. Yeah. And it was a faint one, though. It was faint enough that it wasn't obviously fake. And I was like, oh no, do I say something? That would be real bad if I said something and it wasn't fake.
Oh my goodness. You could have said something to me, Caleb. We're you remember we used to get on Zoom calls at like 3 o'clock in the morning talking about DocuSign and all of that.
Oh man. Are you still using DocuSign?
Yes, I am. What are you using?
Okay. Oh, I'm using DocuSign. I was curious what people switched. Some people switched PandaDoc, and I just haven't got over the I used to like PandaDoc. It was really easy to use, and you could be like live interacting with somebody.
Right.
So I could switch my video feedback, but I could get on. If you don't know this about PandaDoc, you could be live watching them go through the fields. And so when they log into the DocuSign, you don't have to be on a video call with the person. You can say, "Oh, I see you're in the document," almost like a Google Doc where you can see what field they're on. That was fantastic. I loved that. But dang old PandaDoc was like 17 shades of green for
Mm,
different fields for different people. It's like party A, B, and C could just have three different shades of green. It's like, no, I cannot successfully edit this document to make sure it's error free when the colors aren't the right colors. You know what I
right.
mean?
Right. I tried to use Rabbit Sign and they're like, oh, it's 100% free and everything. That is the worst signing platform I've ever used because you can't correct your documents, you can't edit the documents. Like it is
Yeah.
so hard to use, but it's free, right? But I'm just like, for the $45 a month for DocuSign, like I'll just pay the 45, right? As much as
$45 a month. Oh yeah. Okay. I'm up to like 750 bucks a quarter or more
wow.
currently. But I got the enterprise account that gives me unlimited users. So
God,
they charge me per envelope, and I have to prepay for the envelopes and stuff like that. So
God.
that's logistics, people, of just running that stuff, the DocuSign.
I'm on
But
Realtor account and I get unlimited envelopes. If I think it's like for 45 a month.
yeah, I did not get a realtor. I didn't qualify for that. And they come with realtor templates. So I thought about that, but um, I don't know. It is what it is. I've got the hosted power forms where you can charge people. I've got Stripe connected with it too, so we can charge directly on the DocuSign for stuff.
Gotcha.
Handy dandy. Well, good to talk to you. It's been a while. John and Jesse, I see you in here. John, you were the first one in here, man. You got any questions?
Uh, Not yet. Let me think of some. I got
Well,
a
I
bunch
can.
for you because you've been just hitting up the creative group and the sub two group like really
Yeah.
hard. So I got I got some questions. Let me formulate them and
That's fine.
not
Yeah,
starting
you
with
can put them in
whatever.
chat or raise your hand anytime. So, well, I mean, let me go on through some stuff here and switch my video feed, and let's see what my next slide is. Oh yeah, so you guys can learn about me. But while you're looking at that, I'm going to start telling you about a story. The most recent deal I closed for me is in Colorado, and it is a deal where I got the sellers to agree to pay me $200 a month. And it was like it's not the best deal ever. Obviously, it's not that great of a deal if the seller has to pay me, but it's all about the story. So if you don't have a story, you don't have a creative deal. And I just want to touch on that as just a major point. Like you shouldn't just be slinging creative offers all over the place. I guess you can, but I don't like that method, and it doesn't produce a shared understanding. Um, and everybody knows Pace, and he has that story about find the bunnies, right? What is the story behind the deal? And so in this case, there was a couple who had they'd already moved to another property. They had another property in place and just having trouble selling in Pueblo, Colorado. Couldn't sell for what they wanted. After realtor fees, it was going to cost them money out of pocket. So it was cheaper for them to just keep paying the mortgage for a few months and try a little to find some other way to sell it. And a wholesaler brought it to me and said, I, I'm, I need help. I'm trying to find a way to get this to help this couple. And that's actually my favorite thing about not cash offers. I don't like personally, just my flavor. I don't like cash offers. I like creative finance because we get to solve problems for people. And so the question was, can you do something with this? Can you make this deal work? Right. And I looked for a way to do it. And one of the things that finally came into place was I said, look, it doesn't make sense from any of the math. And I showed him my underwriting calculator and the spreadsheet and the projected rent. And I'm like, after expenses, this is going to cost me money. I don't know what to tell you, except that if you paid me, I could take it. And that's probably not a very attractive offer. So, and I talked to other offers or talked through their other options, right? You can let this, you can try to go short sale. You can let it go to foreclosure. You can just walk away. You can try to rent it out yourselves because, I mean, you wouldn't be losing money at that point. But they were moving away. They lived 45 minutes to an hour away. Managing tenants was not ideal for them. They got a new kid. Their life has changed, and it just wasn't a fit. And letting it go to foreclosure actually is a valid option, just to be clear for you guys. But in this case, one of the partners was in financial services, financial planning, consulting, advising, something like that. And the credit hit would just be no good, not acceptable for their career. And so they came back to me a couple days later and said, "We'll do that. We'll pay you the $200." And they have paid me, right? So I gave them they gave me a promissory note for the $200, and that's $200 for the first year and $100 for the next year. So a total of what, $3,600 total? Is that going to ruin me if they don't pay it? No. Be inconvenient. I won't cash flow, but it's a 3.25% interest mortgage, and I want that mortgage. I was like, 5 years from now, Caleb's going to kick today Caleb in the face if he doesn't find a way to make this deal work. So that's what made it work. And we actually ended up closing into a trust, and I've been learning a lot more about trusts lately. And so, I mean, questions in every direction. I've got as many questions as anybody else, maybe even more questions than anybody else, but I'm pretty good at finding the answers. Oh, and there was an insurance check. I went out there and did the flooring. I was going to assign this deal to one of my employees who was looking for a house. And that didn't pan out because they found meth on the walls. That's always fun. So it was a meth house. No, I don't want to say it's a meth house because I don't want to say anything bad about the people. They don't look like meth heads or anything like that, but there is residue on the walls. So, um, I kind of wish the inspection report didn't show that, but the premium inspection report was obtained and it showed that. So I looked it up and meth remediation services were like 9 to 15 grand. But I'm like, it can't, if it's on the walls, it can't, you can just wash them, right? Like, it's latex paint. What's it going to do? It's basically plastic on the wall. And so I looked it up and basically soap and water is supposed to get it off. So I went out there to replace the flooring, I collect a $6,000 insurance check for that. And I took a bucket and a sponge and some soap and a couple of towels and washed every wall, top to bottom, once or twice at least. And then I went with meth testing kits, freely available on, not free, but easily available on Amazon. And there are several different state standards in case you ever run into this meth problem. It runs state by state. They've got different acceptable maximums. Basically, if you're not like running around licking the entire wall, top to bottom, side to side, down a whole hallway, you're not going to be affected by it, even at above the safe limits. But it's a thing. You gotta address it. So I watched them top to bottom, tested all the walls, and got a positive result, a negative result, which is positive for me. So we're meth free at that house, and I'm good to put tenants in. So I just listed it, and we're looking for tenants right now. But that's the deal where the sellers are paying me. No questions?
Let's see if my computer freezes up, Caleb.
I got you.
Just due to the weather. I don't want to screw everything up while you're live, but you're talking about you're learning more about trust and all that other stuff. I saw your post the other day. So I had like a New Jersey deal. The guy just wanted to put in his own name and all that, and we're eventually going to move into a trust this month, post closing, of course. But like between trust and LLCs, contract for deeds, like what are you seeing in the environment? To like prevent due on sale clause or like the banks to, throw fits.
So I've been preaching the trust is not a due on sale proofing, right? There are people who are like Garn St. Germain protects you from the due on sale. Well, not if you're an investor buyer. And from the beginning, I was like, no, that's not what that's for. And so there's been a few issues like that where I'm like, no, come on, you guys. And eventually it comes around. And now the community and lots of other people finally believe it. And they're starting to spread that news that no, a trust does not automatically eliminate the risk of due on sale. I believe, my opinion, as not an attorney, CPA, blah, 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 blah. I'm just some dude in a basement in Kansas. But I genuinely believe that the risk of due on sale is significantly lowered by using a trust. A land trust is a great mechanism to do that. Somebody asked earlier this week, is land trust the best practice? And I said, no, it's not the best practice, right? It's not necessarily the best practice. It depends upon what state you're in, right? Pace has lots of information about Arizona being terrible for land trusts if you want privacy or anything like that. I'm aware that Texas, if you form the land trust incorrectly, I believe it has to do, don't quote me on this one, I believe it has to do with the trustee and beneficiary being the same entity, that it's void from the beginning. Like, so if you do it wrong, you can screw that up pretty bad. Generally, it's confusing to people to be buying in trusts. So, like, if you're trying to resell to an owner occupant down the line, that may be more confusing. It may be harder to close the deal on the downwind side of that unless you understand this well enough to easily explain it and host your own Q&A session with your potential buyers if they have to buy it in the trust. So I like the land trust route. I think it reduces the risk of due on sale, but there's a website, mylandtrustee.com, and they've got a Q&A session, and they're like, listen, there's some things when you take a property in a trust, there are some certain things you can't do anymore. Let me find that site and put it up on screen. And these are the people I use in Florida. Zoom window, land trusts. Hang on. No, I don't know where their FAQ went. Oh, here we go. Pros and cons of land trusts, right? So is it the best practice? No, not necessarily. It's a best practice. It's a great way to do it, 100%. But depending upon the situation of the deal. If you're not in Texas and you have a sub-2 deal and it's a VA loan, my question to you is why in the world are you doing it as a sub-2 and not a contract for deed? Because the VA pamphlet. Let me look that up real quick. And this is public stuff. I'll find it on my Google Drive and put it on screen here. The VA pamphlet indicates that it's not considered a disposition. Yeah, here we go. Download. Let's open this. So in section 6S, unrestricted transfers, certain transfers do not require prior approval by holder or VA. They may not be accelerated due to these types of transfers. And it rolls through a whole list. Unrestricted transfer types, meaning they can't accelerate, include A, B, C, D, E, F, G, blah, 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 blah. And continued, it does not consider the sale on an installment contract, contract for deed, or other similar arrangement. And the keywords are in which title is not transferred to be a disposition. They don't require approval. They're unrestricted, and loans may not be accelerated. That's pretty stinking simple to me. Reading a plain language coming from the VA about how to regulate their loans. Isn't that pretty great? So other than Texas, which heavily restricts, the website. Yeah, the website address for the trust information is here. It's My Land Trustee. I like this guy. He's got a great podcast, really informative guy. He's got a law office and a trustee service. And this is, I mean, I'll just drop this in chat for those of you who are in the Zoom meeting. Let me put that in the files. There we go. I mean, you can look up on screen. You can grab this and go get the actual full download. I excerpted it and just have these 2 pages so it's easier to digest, because I send it to realtors and people all the time. Like, listen, you can do this all day. You don't have to assume the loan, because that's the common thing with VA loans is it's assumable, so you should assume it. Well, not always. It's not always the ideal scenario for both parties. John, I touched on like 2 things. What else? What other angle can I take this from?
No, that was a big one. Because I don't do wholesaling. I'm really like trying to latch on to like newbies and help them out. So trying to better structure deals, particularly the wholesales. And like, yeah, just getting like the different TTPs, I guess you could call it, SOPs for trusts and things of that nature. Like, no, that's good.
Okay. Back to this trustee thing then. When you have the property in a trust, you can't just go evict yourself. You have to hire an attorney to do that. That means it's more expensive. Okay. Now, is this Florida specific? That's what I don't know about this particular page. This business is Florida specific. There are like 6 states that have a land trust that's actually built and sanctioned and regulated. But just because the land trust doesn't, quote unquote, exist in legislation for the other 44 states does not mean that you can't do one. Technically, the trust is just a revocable grantor trust, and that's allowed. That's okay. There's no problem with that. Now, what else? Tax prep, it may cost more. Loss of control. So loss of control is a technical thing. If you're not the beneficiary, then you're not in charge. Technically, the trustee is the one who has to do all this stuff. You can't just go signing contracts typically as the beneficiary. You have to have, so it may make your ownership and control of the property more complex. And there could be annual dues to your trustee. So you either have to own 2 LLCs or be the personally be the beneficiary while your LLC is the trustee or something along those lines. So it can complicate how much work you have to do to own and operate the property from a technical standpoint. And then they do make a point that if you assume a mortgage, which that's not the way we're going to do things. We're not assuming mortgages. You could pay documentary taxes. Florida's pretty expensive on this stuff. And then they acknowledge anytime the title transfers, they can accelerate that loan. Anytime. And then it's on you to prove that you're not transferring it against the rules of the mortgage itself. Okay. It's not actually anonymous to the IRS if that's what you're looking for. And then, I mean, you can take homestead status for a property that you have in a trust. Oh, you lose in Florida, you lose some of those protections. So anyway, again, that's mylandtrustee.com. We've closed a couple properties in trust using their documents. I talked to their attorney and recommended some changes to their docs a while back, which they adopted. So that's cool. What about we have a question. Donna, go ahead.
Hey, thanks. Question about the contract for deeds. So how do you protect yourself against the sellers, like having, if something happens and they go out and get a lien or something against them, how do you protect yourselves from that?
Sure. And so a contract is only as good as the person behind it. That's all. So you have to establish trust. Like it's just a way to document the relationship between you and the other person and the agreement you have. Now, legally, when you, in most states, I don't believe you're required to record a contract for deed, but it's advised. There are some states that do require it within 30 days, 60 days, something like that, because it protects the rights of the buyer by documenting on public record. I, Caleb Christopher, am in the process of buying from Donna this property, right? And that way on the public record, there's an encumbrance. So if they go to try to put an additional lien with anybody who's doing traditional like processes, which is I'm going to do a title search and see if you have authority to place a lien, I'm going to discover that contract for deed and I'm going to have to ask the question, do you have authority to place this lien on this property? And they would have to lie or usually violate the terms of the contract for deed. That doesn't stop them from doing it. That doesn't stop them from using a private money lender and just attaching additional liens to the property to your detriment. I mean, it technically you're not liable for those, but the damages go back to the seller. And if they got no money, how are you going to, squeeze blood out of a stone? It doesn't happen. So protections include making sure you record your contract for deed and making sure you have a shared understanding with that seller. Like, hey, this is no longer your property. Technically, it's in your name on title. That's because we're doing this to reduce risk of due on sale or whatever your strategy is there. So make sure you have that shared understanding between the two of you so that you can get a feel for if they're going to be shady. Because if they're going to be shady, I'm like, no, I don't trust them for a contract for deed, right? If you have to be able to trust the other person reasonably. And it can be really expensive. I say this a lot. It can be really expensive to be right. So just because technically I'm right on paper does not mean that I can take that to court and enforce it and get paid back. It can be real expensive. So that is always a risk with a contract for deed, that the seller goes and tries to place additional liens. Now, I sold a property on a contract for deed to somebody, but I had private lenders on the property and I knew that I was going to have to refinance. And so I let my buyer know. I said, I'm going to have to refinance this in 6 months and my balance will still stay below your balance. I sold it at 165. My financing was like 85 or 90. And so I'm like, I have to refinance this 85 or 90 and I'm going to put another mortgage in place. I'm going to refinance it to like a DSCR long-term loan. And that's not going to affect you. Your monthly payment's $14.99 every month and 37 cents. And my payment's going to be somewhere between $600 and $1,200 every month. So I will be paying less than you. We're both in good shape. And this is an investor buyer. So, you can still do those sorts of things and record stuff as the seller, as long as it's acknowledged. Is that helpful? You have any more questions?
Yeah, no, that definitely is helpful. Yeah, the situation we're getting it, well, I shouldn't say a situation. So it'll be our first partnership, but this property has already been closed on and they have it as a contract for deed. So it's basically a hybrid and they've wrapped it all into one promissory note. So we're coming in as equity partners now. It's already closed. So we're just trying to figure out the best way to secure ourselves in the transaction because we're bringing money to the table now. And we will have a 65% interest in the property.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Are you getting partial ownership of the entity that has the contract for deed?
So what we've come to the agreement on, what we think would be best is basically he's going to go in because it's already in his LLC and he's going to go in and just update his operating agreement. And then we'll have our agreement on the side as to what all we're doing with it. So that was kind of because we went back and forth. Do we create another LLC, but we would have had to gotten the seller's approval for it and all that type of stuff. So I think just changing the operating agreement seems to be the best course of action.
So you're joining as a partner and not as a lender then?
No, we're joining as a partner, a private money partner.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Equity partner, basically. Yeah. We'll get 65% of the rents. And then when it sells, we'll get 65% of the equity plus what we've put into it back.
Try to poke holes in your own stuff because you never need to until it's too late to think about that when you're putting together. Even if you can put your agreements in bullet points and attach them to the way the LLC is going to be managed, because you have the authority to sell or resell or refinance or whatever. A lot of times after your seasoning period of owning that contract for deed property for a little while, you can actually go refinance it. Not that that's the goal if you've got a good interest rate, but
Well, this one does come with a 5-year balloon, unfortunately.
oh, okay.
Yeah,
On the seller's equity or the entire thing?
on the entire thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Now, the partner we're going in with, he has a good relationship with the seller. So as of right now, he's confident and feeling like he can extend it, but it is not all in writing. So as we all know, we don't know if that will technically happen 5 years down the road. A lot can happen.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And then like, have you guys agreed to maintain an emergency? Like who's really in charge? That's my concern. Anytime that there's a JV, things have the potential to get so messy and make people so frustrated. So that's always a danger point for me. I come from cybersecurity. I've got a bachelor's in cybersecurity and risk management. And I like poking holes in things and finding ways to shore up and reduce risk.
Right. Yeah. All that management side's going to be on his end. He actually has a property management company. He's going to run everything through. So we're going in almost as a silent equity partner.
Yeah. No control or anything like that. You're stuck at the whim of them. That's fair as long as you acknowledge and understand that to go into it. So no problem there. Unless it is for you.
It's not a problem until it becomes a problem.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like the other thing, I just wanted to make another quote for that people can remember is when it comes to joint ownership or operation of a property, I don't like having a partner be the one that delivers one of the services to operate the property, such as property management. I would rather have a third party I can fire than a friend I have to break up with. And that's where that can get really messy. And so, yes, it's a little less profitable, but at least you can both be, right? You're not on opposite sides of the table about you're mismanaging the property. No, I'm not. Well, I'm trying. Well, I'm not. You're not doing good enough and all this stuff. It can be like, hey, this company is terrible. Let's fire them. So much easier to deal with that way. And so I'm hesitant to enter into partnerships because of that as well.
Makes sense.
Thank you. Good question. Evan, we have a question.
What's up, dude? How are you?
Fantastic.
Good, man.
We haven't talked that much.
I know, dude. We need to. Doing an event with, Chemo Quants in sub 2. Anyways, we're doing an event March 20th, but I'm trying to plan a time for y'all to come out to Nashville and we can get some people together. But I had 2 questions. I'll ask the first one super quick. So one, someone contacted me on social media, and we've got to know each other really well. And it was cool. He was like, hey, I got my first deal and I actually want to wrap it. And he's like, and I know you've done some. And so could you help me with it? And I'm like, sure. The only thing is I've really tried to, stray away from partnerships, like long-term, especially like what you were just talking about, like rentals and all that. And so I usually just try to pay an assignment fee. But on this one, like he's dead set on wrapping it. He's like, nope. And it's like a 3% rate. It should be a really, really good deal. It's got some equity. So in my mind, I'm like, you know what? It seems a little bit less risky to partner on a wrap than it would be like a rental that you have to actively manage. But I wanted to hear kind of your thoughts on that and see if there's anything I could do to kind of maybe help mitigate some of that, or if that's something I should just stay away from.
I mean, on a wrap, there's a lot less management to happen. But when it comes to if you have a defaulter who starts fronting the payments and, if you decide to take action to move forward on foreclosing and your partner doesn't feel like that or doesn't have the cash, I've got somebody that owes me like 18 grand. It's due at the end of the month. And they're like, I don't think I've got the money. I notified them a month and a half ahead of time. I don't think I have enough money to pay you. And I'm like, well, pretty sure you do if you just look for it, because I know you've been busy. But like stuff like that, like you're going to rack up these fees and you have to make sure that you can get paid. So that's where the partnerships obviously get messy. But on a wrap, unless you're facing something like that, it should be pretty straightforward. It's just splitting cash flow.
Right. Because I'll be servicing all of it and we're bringing the money 50-50 on the upfront. So
yeah, exactly. So if you've got servicing set up and you set up the payments to be split to 2 different destinations, it's pretty set it and forget it.
Cool. Okay. Second question, if you don't mind. So we got 7 under contract this week, which is like crazy for me because I'm trying to figure out like what I'm doing, right? You know, I'm like, how
Incredible.
do I spell all these, right? But there's some of them I'm coming across that I've even been passing up on. Just agents are bringing me deals, and a lot of them are like, 6.5% interest rates or six or whatever, where sure, if I wrapped it and found a homestead buyer, I can make a couple $100, whatever. And some of it I'm thinking kind of long term with these agents where it's like instead of being like buy, like I'm like, hey, let me show you how we could actively market this, right?
Right.
And I'll do it for you for free. And then essentially in the contract, it states that if they find another buyer, which they probably won't because it's been listed for 100 days or whatever, that they can terminate my agreement. I think it's really fair. I'm just trying to help them out, right? And if I find
Sure.
someone, great. And today I found someone at like 30K down and good cash flow. And so it's like cool. But I'm curious, like a lot of these deals, I'm scared. I'm like, dude, if I'm gonna double close, I don't want to be stuck with a deal that has a 7% interest rate that in an area that maybe I don't like. So I'm curious if you have any thoughts on should I be doing that? And two, like how to mitigate the risk, I guess, of someone backing out.
Well, I mean, if it's actually a double close, then you can treat it just like the transactional lenders do. They don't send their money in until the B to C, right? We're doing A to B and B to C,
Yeah.
a simultaneous closing or a double close. Like I'm not talking days apart, I'm talking same day. So unless B to C put their money in, you don't close the A to B.
Oh, okay.
It's literally that simple if you can do that. Now, the other problem is you you can't do a double close and have an FHA buyer. If it's wrap financing, that's fine. But if
Like
you
an
if you
under
were
financing, is that what you mean? Like, or for me, like that's what I'm trying to understand.
I'm saying if you had a buyer coming in with FHA financing, there's a 90-day anti-flip rule, so you can't do these double closes and they don't pay wholesale fees and things like that. So if you're wrapping the existing mortgage to an owner occupant buyer or whoever or an investor buyer, I don't care. That's fine. It's just who is your buyer? How are they planning to finance it? If they're okay to buy it with and usually something that's on the market over 100 days, probably still not going to find an FHA buyer.
Right.
So it's just be aware that you can't be swapping who's the deed holder less than 90 days before you transfer it to an FHA buyer.
Got it. So the biggest risk is that they end up defaulting and then I'm stuck with this property that has a 7% rate on it.
Right. Right. And so, I mean, you can have the B to C transaction fully signed and funded, just
Cool.
pending funding for the A to B. As long as you indicate on B to C that it's contingent on your contract, that it's contingent upon you successfully closing on the property on the front side.
All right, I need to talk to Marcelo about that. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah. So listen, you guys, anytime you're going to do one of these transactions where you're going to double close, every time you're going to double close, you need to make sure your B to C contract indicates that it's contingent upon the seller, gaining or having clear title to pass to the person. Now, if it's sub 2, you need to say it's clear title subject to obviously the loan. So you need to indicate that it's subject to existing loans. But if you don't have clear title and you've got a contract, then you're unable to deliver to them what you promised. And that's a problem. So if your seller stalls or something like that.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a YouTube question. Just had an agent ask me who holds the mortgage in an owner finance deal. I thought I knew the answer, but the agent seemed suspicious. So I was wondering what would the correct answer to be That is that the mortgage, if it's a pure seller finance. So let's make sure we understand seller finance. Seller finance is a category of transaction types. Okay. I think it's time to whip out my iPad. I love the iPad. Let me minimize the other stuff so it's nice and clean over here. Yes, it doesn't go full screen because there's a third-party app. I'm casting to Windows machine, so we'll have to enjoy this together. All right, new page. So seller financing, I need to make that better, don't I? That's better. That's a container that contains pure seller finance. You've got contract for deed is a type of seller finance, right? Sub 2, I would classify as a form of seller finance, even if it's 0% markup. Wraps, lease option, kind of. That's kind of a fuzzy, like, right, so seller finance has several different ways to do it. Now, the question was, who holds the mortgage in a seller or an owner finance deal? Well, you got the deed. Let's try this again. I'm trying to draw fast. There we go. We're going to have a deed and a mortgage, two separate documents, okay? And it's going to depend on the scenario. You're the deed holder now. Title is a legal concept, by the way. I tend to get technical. The deed is the document that conveys title. Title is your hold title in your entity, but you don't have a title in your hand. You have a deed in your hand. Okay. So then you've got the mortgage or deed of trust. Now, the lender is the seller. If this is a pure seller finance, or if it's a wrap, or if it's a hybrid where there's a second position, the lender is the seller. They hold the mortgage. They can sell that mortgage, by the way, if they want to. And back to partnerships, if you've got a contract for deal and one of you wants to exit, do you have an exit plan? Do you have an exit strategy? Can somebody be forced to exit? Like, you need a robust LLC agreement determining who can come and go and have decision-making power over the deal you've got going. Okay, so we've got the mortgage. That's the seller finance. Okay, that's the seller finance mortgage. But what if it was a sub 2? Well, or a hybrid. You would have both in the case of a hybrid. And this is a question from YouTube, so I'm going to try to answer thoroughly, and then I'm just going to cut it short unless we have a clarifying question. So you've got this mortgage, lender is a bank, le bank, look at me go, and borrower is your seller. That didn't change. But the seller is the one who holds the seller finance equity amount, even though you get the deed. Unless, and like I said, this is a category containing multiple methods. In contract for deed or land contract or agreement for sale, there's no deed transfer. That doesn't happen. In a lease option, there's no deed transfer. Okay, but these other ones, the deed does transfer. Hope that helps. Next question we had from Jennifer. How can you foreclose on a wrap where you're holding the deed? You wouldn't foreclose. Are you thinking of like a contract for deed? Where you've sold it on a contract for deed, but you still hold legal title?
Yeah, well, I was just curious because I think not the last gentleman, the one before him, you said that you can foreclose. So I was like, well, if you're doing a wrap, usually people will hold the deed, right? So how can you foreclose in that situation?
If you're doing a seller finance and the deed does transfer, if you're doing not a contract for deed, then in a seller finance transaction, the deed does transfer. And so
Right,
you would
okay.
be foreclosing and forcing it to auction. And here's another little quotable thing. I want to make sure that people please stop saying foreclose and take the property back. Those are not the same thing. Foreclosing is forcing it to auction. Taking it back may be the result of a foreclosure if you bid on your own debt. Right? You've already lent out. Imagine you're the first position lender and you're the only person who's lent, and you lent out $250,000. They default and the auction bids come in at 150, even though 200,000 is still owed. You don't have to accept that bid. You can bid 200,000 for your own debt because you already spent it. And that's how you end up with REOs or real estate owned or bank owned properties. It's because they bid on their own debt rather than taking a loss. And now they're stuck with this property, which is apparently more favorable to them that they can sell separately than taking a really low cash bid at auction. So foreclose and take the property back is not necessarily a thing. It's just now, if you're in second position and you foreclose, the likelihood that you're going to want to bring the cash to pay off the first mortgage just so that you can preserve your 20,000, 30,000 relatively low, I believe. So that's, I just want to fight that little terminology battle. Let's try to stop saying foreclose and take the property back.
Thank you.
Had another question in YouTube. How to make sure the HELOC is closed before taking it over sub 2? Is there something specific we should add? Yeah, let's expand this thing. Every once in a while, OneNote crashes. I like OneNote for my iPad, by the way, if you're looking for apps. It generally works pretty well, except for the last week, I've had a couple of crashes. But all right, so HELOC. Can you take a HELOC sub 2? Yes, you can. But guess what? That's a line of credit. Lines of credit can be drawn against. You can write checks against it, use a card, bank card, whatever. So, oh yeah, I'm not sharing screen yet. Whoop. There we go. Can you take a HELOC sub 2? Yes, but as an open line of credit, you don't want that person making additional draws. That would, to put it nicely, frickin' suck. So you've agreed to a purchase price. Let's draw a little bar chart. I love bar charts. Your purchase price, $430,000. Ding. Great job. Of that 430, you've got 20K cash to seller. This is not proportional. That's a logarithmic scale. 20K cash to seller. They've got a 30K HELOC. Oop, that's capitalized. Home equity line of credit. Then what's that leave us with? Man. Oh, 380. Yeah. 380 mortgage. You don't want this changing. You want to be paying it down. So one thing you can do is freeze that line of credit. Can I guarantee that you can freeze this? No. You want to freeze that line of credit. Can you do that as a closing doc? It's possible, but you have to contact the lender and say, I want to be done. I don't want to make any more draws. Can we freeze withdrawals because I only want to pay back? If they agree to that, if they send you a freeze agreement or something like that, great. You've got it. You can put it in the closing docs and make sure that line of credit actually gets frozen. That is ideal. If the bank won't do it, now you're back down to trusting the person. You have to trust them not to use that. And that stinks. That's a scary situation. So I don't like doing that very much, but you can do an agreement to freeze or agreement to not use or something like that. But it's only as good as the person behind the paper when you make an agreement like that. Okay. What was my other thought on that? Oh, ideally, if you can't freeze it, then ideally you've got something where it's actually like this. And you've got, yeah, 20K cash. And then you've got another, like, ideally, if you can match. If you happen to have a dollar for dollar match or something similar of seller finance included in the deal. So if we push that deal up to 4, I'm not saying push your price up to do this, but I'm saying if you happen to have seller financing in addition to a HELOC, then anything that they do here, you could be like, you can have an agreement that says is an automatic reduction against the seller finance because you're going to have to be the one making payments on it. Can the seller unfreeze it? That's a good question. I don't believe so. Once a line of credit has been frozen, I guess people can be dastardly. I mean, if you're getting into a sub 2 relationship, you have to trust them somewhat not to blow up your deal, right? That's already a thing you have to have accomplished. And that's an ongoing relationship you've got with them. In fact, this takes me back to our core process, our proven process at Creative TC. It's 5 steps. 1, shared. You can find this on our website, creativetc.io. Shared understanding. That is the first step to doing a creative finance deal. Period. End of story. If you have a problem later on down the line, guess what? You probably did not establish a quality shared understanding. Contract is easier to say. What I mean is paperwork overall. When you establish your shared understanding, what can you do with it? Then you can put it on paper. So when you're talking about the JV agreements from earlier, that's what I'm telling you. Get a shared understanding. Get some bullet points or something like line it out, ask the questions, try to get it all together. Get your shared understanding, put it on get the right contract. And then if you're doing a real estate deal, our next step, right title company or closing attorney or whoever it is, whatever you're using, right? You have to have shared understanding, right contract, right title company. That's when we step in. I mean, we help in these phases, right? We help consulting, make sure you have a shared understanding. We help you get the paperwork correct, like get it under contract with the right understandings documented. We help you find the right title company, and then we manage escrow. Escrow being a broad term, including everything related, all the parties and the documents and the dollars and all that. Then close the deal. Now, if I run into turbulence here, what probably happened? There's probably a breakdown in one of the earlier steps. These build on each other. It turns out, we've had paperwork come back. Like, it turns out the closing docs don't reflect what somebody has understood at the very beginning. Because we didn't ask the right questions. We didn't explain it all. There you go. In the chat, Anya's got it on our homepage, Creative TC. We've got that process, proven process. So what question was I answering? I forget. Line of credit stuff. So you have to get this established shared understanding because it lasts long term. The relationship does. Yeah, sub 2 disclosure is absolutely vital. With Creative TC, you get one freebie. We'll help you get it done the first time. After that, you're going to pay separately for us to go get that because really, I don't feel like you have a deal under contract until you have sub 2 disclosures signed by the seller. Because how are you going to sue for specific performance on a sub 2 deal at close of escrow when the seller refuses to perform, when they say, oh, I don't actually understand this deal. I didn't understand that this was what was going to happen. If you don't have sub 2 disclosures, good luck. Good luck anyways, right? The likelihood of you actually suing in court and winning and everybody being hunky-dory long-term, extremely low. You generally just don't want to get in that position. So it's better to disqualify at this stage by getting a shared understanding. Oh, I don't want to leave my credit in place. Okay, now you have a different conversation. Not let's hurry up and put it under contract. And that I've got somebody grab on my team, somebody grab the link to the why you can't close creative deals YouTube video, please, and put that in the chat. That has the where I talk about cash realtor and keeping it. You have to rule out cash realtor and keeping it.
And the quote, a contract is only as good as the person behind it.
Yeah. So the shared understanding, get to know your person. There's a story behind every deal. You have to rule out cash realtor and keeping it. Now you've got the shared understanding and creative is back on the table, or is on the table for the first time, actually, I feel like. Okay. I hope that's helpful perspective. We got Evan again.
Can you hear me now? Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm hogging all the time with Caleb.
By me.
By the way, I'm putting all those quotes on my back wall. It's just everything you just said, I'm just gonna put back there.
Just on a scroll.
Yeah, dude. People are like, "What's that?" So I'm
dude in Kansas.
Yeah, that's funny. I'm considering changing the insurance on this wrap I just did, and I actually haven't done that on any of the wraps, just because I guess I've been, I don't know. I felt a little bit scared about the possibility of doing sale. Like when it comes to me buying it, if I was renting it out, I'm fine. Like I'll do it. But when it's someone else's home, that's tough for me to do. So I'm curious, I guess any advice on that? And then also, I mean, because the insurance policy on the old one is very expensive. It's like $400 a month. It's like a hazard something. So it is kind of killing this
Is it
deal.
the forced placed insurance?
I'm not sure what that is.
Okay, forced placed insurance is where the mortgage company says you're not providing insurance adequate or satisfactory to us, so we're going to put our own policy on it. And it may not protect you.
I can check with Marcella.
It tends to be more expensive. So I'll say this, a lot of the sub-2 docs and disclosures indicate that it's in the sole discretion of the buyer whether or not to even maintain insurance for the property. Well, guess what? That's a default on the mortgage if you don't provide insurance. But guess what? There's 3 R's, and I teach my team this regularly. There's 3 R's in any contract or document: rights, responsibilities, and remedies. The 3 R's of any paperwork. Who has what rights? Who has what responsibilities? And if they screw up on that, who has what remedies? Well, in a mortgage, which is a contract between 2 parties, the buyer, one example of their rights is that they have the right to cure if they default and the lender decides to accelerate. So if the buyer or borrower defaults, then one of the remedies is that for the lender is that they can foreclose, they can charge late fees, they can do several things as remedies to the borrower's default, better words. Once that has happened, the remedy has been initiated. Hey, you have to cure this default in this way. Well, they have a right to cure. They can't just force the foreclosure, even if you come up with the money to reinstate the loan. So rights, remedies, and responsibilities. When it comes to insurance, hazard insurance is one of the required things in any mortgage or deed of trust. And it is subject to the approval of the lender. It has to be of the dollar amount and the type of, and whatever that I as the lender want, because it is that insurance provides security for me. That property, you own it. Well, you technically own it, but you've given me a mortgage or deed of trust to give me rights of foreclosure over it because it is security. That property is security for my money. And so I can require you to have insurance that's this tall to ride. If your insurance isn't this tall, we don't ride. And I'm going to put my own insurance on it. And so all of these documents, lending documents, give the lender the right to make payments of taxes and insurance and any other encumbrance that endangers their security. I got $600,000 on the line as the lender for you in buying your fancy property, and you're not going to insure it. I'm going to place my own insurance and you owe me back for it. Because what is it to spend $2,000 a year on insurance, even at a loss? Just put yourself in the shoes of the lender. Even at a loss of $2,000, I could lose $600,000 if it burns down uninsured. So yeah, it's worth $2,000 out of pocket, even if you're in default. I'm going to go ahead and pay that. Technically, you owe it, but maybe I don't get paid back. Still less risky than potential fire with $600,000. So when it comes to insurance, there must be insurance on the property. Technically, though, if you don't, I'm coming full circle here.
Yeah, you're good.
If you don't insure it, then they'll place their own insurance anyway, and you can just pay that. But it's not for your benefit, it's for their benefit. And so it may cost way more with a preferred provider for them. It may not provide coverage or benefit to you. And so it's not ideal, but you can actually just cancel the policy and say, go ahead and place your own policy. Okay. And then they're not going to receive a copy of a policy with somebody else's name on it. So there's several strategies to insuring a property where the deed has actually already transferred. Is that the case we're talking? Deeds are already transferred?
So my rat buyer?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. So whoever's name is on deed, on title, on the deed, has the insurable interest in the property. So they need a policy in that person's name.
Okay. He has his name, like he already did the insurance. So he's paying his separately right now. And I'm paying within the, PITI, right? So I'm paying that. So what I want to do is get it switched out and just send that to the lender so they can put it in that. And then I can just charge him whatever they deem the
exactly.
escrow, I guess, to be. So I don't know. I'm like, dude, if Due on Sale got called, like, what would we do then? Since it's not me directly, like, just scared me. So.
Yeah. And I appreciate the, I don't know, ethical is not the right word, but you're concerned for other people, right? It matters. People do deals, as Peter put in the YouTube chat. It's like paperwork doesn't do deals. People do deals. Houses don't default. People do. That was my point when I told that to Melissa Palmer. We have a little session every week that we chat. So yes, you can and should be able to swap out the existing policy with the other policy. That you're middleman. You're party B in an ABC transaction. Okay, so party C owns the property now. You're receiving a wrap payment, and party A's mortgage is being paid. Insurance company wants insurance with this person's name on it. Some mortgage companies are okay with any policy that names this person as at least an additional insured or additional interest or something. Other times they're like, literally, if they had a bad Chipotle burrito, the person at the mortgage company who looks at the documents may be like, heck with this. I'm calling due on sale. That's not the right, technically not the right thing. Whereas if they have a fantastic day, they're like, their name's on it. Like it's literally that much up in the air whether or not they accelerate for the insurance piece. So are there remedies for due on sale? Yes, I've got a whole somebody on my
Right.
team grab the due on sale page. I've resolved due on sale several times. And can you always place it in a trust? No, not always. I mean, a trust is a great way to handle it, but we get
Okay.
down to a best practice versus the best practice. They're all a best practice, and it's situational. There we
Okay.
go.
Thank you.
PTCIO/services/due on sale. That's where you can read more about what sorts of considerations come into resolving a due on sale. It's
I've read all
not killing
that
anybody.
between like me and party A and B, but when it's A, B, C, then I'm like, I don't know how that works. So okay.
I would imagine. Well, you've got something on the line too, right? Because if it forecloses and goes to auction, you've probably got equity in the deal that's not going to get paid by an auction buyer.
Good bit of equity, yeah.
Yeah, and so you're going to lose that equity as well. So you've got skin in the game as well to help out and coach that person through. Like party C had to sign disclosures that they understand there's a risk of due on sale.
Of course. I told him to, I mean, just straight
Right,
up.
exactly. So they've got the disclosures. That is that's the natural risk that's inherent in the type of transaction. And so if a due on sale happens, it's okay to go back and say, let's work together to resolve this. Because
Thank you.
if you don't do anything, it's literally going to foreclosure. You're going to lose the house, and it damages the seller's credit and all this other stuff.
Thank you.
Ooh. Susan on my team says she's got one that's an A to B to C to D contract for deed. Can you wrap a contract for deed? I'm going to say yes. I've been doing it for a while. I call it a soft wrap. Copyright 2022. But it's fun if you do it right. You can't just do willy-nilly. The paperwork has to reflect what's allowed. And our investor-friendly contract for deed allows for the investor buyer to make renovations, to resell the property, to refinance, to do certain other things that are not necessarily in the title company's version of a contract for deed or land contract. And I've looked state by state. There may be state specific regulations, so I don't want to discount that, but state by state, the content is the same. It's literally the words contract for deed versus land contract versus agreement for sale versus whatever, bond for deed. You can do a find and replace and effectively use the same document. Ooh, boy, that's fun. So insurance, one more touch on insurance. You can just call the mortgage company and say, I've canceled my insurance. Go ahead and place your insurance on it. You can do that. I've never seen somebody do that. You can carry 2 policies. Heads up, there's a risk. I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm not sure what the best practice is here. I can't tell you because it's so up in the air at the mortgage company. Do they care that you change the insurance or do they not? Day by day, department by department, company by company, it 100% varies. So you can leave 2 policies in place. I've got one client that's got like 20 or 30 policies. He told me he's paying $5,000 a month in just secondary insurance policies because he wants to reduce the risk of due on sale. I understand that. The risk, and I've been told this by insurance agents, the risk is that if there's dual coverage, 2 policies, that the 2 companies are just going to argue. Their job is they have people whose full-time job is to not pay or to deny claims. And so if they find out there's another policy, guess what? They've got somebody on salary at $200,000 a year whose job is to not pay policies. And they're going to find reasons to say, no, that company should cover it. And the other company is going to say the same thing. No, this company. No, that company. And you're just stuck in the middle with no house or a burned down house or whatever. And they're going to argue for who knows how long. Now, technically, the old policy, the seller doesn't have an insurable interest. And so it's void or invalid. But how long does it take to convince somebody whose job is on this side, whose job is to find a way to pin it on somebody else? How long is it going to take you to convince them that the first policy was invalid? So that's that. So the other thing is some people do this where they leave both policies in place for a short time, 60, 90, 120 days, and then they cancel the policy and swap out. And some people do it straight at close of escrow. Now, I did talk to somebody in a bank loss mitigation department, and he's a goody two-shoes. If I was that guy, if I was working at a bank, I would probably be that guy. The one who's like, Oh, I see somebody violating due on sale. I think they're going to violate. This dude literally told me on the phone that he sets a calendar reminder for himself 90 to 120 days after he gets suspicion that somebody's trying to sell sub 2 to go check the deed. That's goody two shoes himself, specifically that person, right? If you talk to a different loan rep, they don't care. But this one guy, he does. And there's several more of him in the company. At every mortgage company, there's several of these, not vigilante, but the ones who are like trying to be tip top super enforcer man. They're out there. And sometimes you get hit with one of those. So I can see that there's a case. Now, if you happen to have your deed recorded or your documents or whatever recorded more than 120 days out, this dude apparently isn't going to find it. But there's a lot of risk in not recording stuff. Who knows? I'll take time for one more question if you've got it. Otherwise, we're going to wrap this up. I am headed to Squad Up Summit, and I want to put this on screen. I need to get my head out of the way. So, listen, Creative TC, we've got lots of resources on the website. I've got my YouTube channel. We have a Facebook group now where you can come and ask whatever questions you want, just like this, and maybe we'll queue some of these questions up that we have in the Facebook group and bring them to this. We'll be hosting this session once every week, and I want to see you guys at Squad Up Summit. We have free 15-minute chats anytime. John, I'll see you there. Fantastic. I haven't booked my stay yet. I'm trying to get my family there, and I was waiting on one of my people to get their visa so that they can show up. So I'm not booking flights just yet, but I have my VIP ticket. There'd be 3 of us from Creative TC there. Oh, we have a typo. Embarrassing. That's all right.
Oh,
Ah,
God.
well, that's version 1. That's all right. You know what? That's why I have version numbers on the bottom of all my documents, because we make changes on the regular, such as this is a public document, such as this one. This is the one that Pace published and made public at one point. And the last update I did was in January of 2024. If you're working with me or using my docs, you will always be able to see what version of the document it is, because we maintain that on all of our documents. Okay, everybody. Thank you. I might have some swag. Yeah, we're looking at getting some hats made for this. Have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone for coming.